A millionaire forces a waitress to play the piano. She surprises everyone, leaving him speechless and in love. Before the story starts, leave a comment below. From which city are you watching? Enjoy the story. Harry Montoya. A millionaire known for both his success and the coldness with which he treated those around him, hosted a grand gala at the most luxurious millionaire forces waitress to play piano, surprising everyone. Before we start the story, leave a comment below. Which city are you watching from? Enjoy the story. Harry Montoya. A millionaire known for both his success and the coldness with which he treated those around him, hosted a grand gala at the most luxurious hotel in the city. While the guests mingled and toasted, Elisa, a young and reserved waitress, hurried between the tables. Something caught her attention, a grand piano in the corner of the room. For a moment, she froze, lost in memories. Before, her life was consumed by responsibilities that had been her world. Now, as a single mother to a 5-year-old child, she had time to herself. A young waitress named Elisa was busy serving drinks to the other guests. She was reserved and didn't like to draw attention to herself. But she saw a grand piano in the corner of the room. She stopped and thought about the past. Elisa used to have a life full of responsibilities. But now she was a single mother to a 5-year-old girl. Her mother was very sick. The piano was just a dream for her. Harry was in charge of the event. He noticed Elisa standing still and looking lost. He didn't like to see that kind of behavior at his events. "Elisa," he said. Elisa turned and saw that everyone was looking at her. "Yes, sir," she said. She tried to stay calm. Harry walked toward the piano. He was serious and scary. The pianist didn't show up. "You seem fascinated. Can you play?" Elisa felt nervous. It had been years since she touched a piano. Harry's intense gaze demanded an answer. "I don't know," she replied hesitantly. Harry gave a cold smile. He didn't believe her. Saw an opportunity to the pianist didn't show up. Elisa was intrigued. "Can you play?" he asked. His gaze intense. Elisa felt a flutter in her stomach. It had been years since she touched a piano. Harry's intense stare demanded an answer. A little," she replied hesitantly. Harry gave a cold smile. He didn't believe her. He saw an opportunity to amuse himself a little. "Then prove it. Play here now." Elisa stammered, glancing around nervously. "Yes. Now." His tone was almost a challenge. "Consider this an opportunity." A murmur rippled through the guests, eager to see what would unfold. Elisa knew she couldn't refuse. Taking a deep breath, the pianist didn't show up. "You seem fascinated. Can you play?" Elisa felt nervous. It had been years since she touched a piano. Harry's intense gaze demanded an answer. "I don't know how to play," she replied hesitantly. Harry gave a cold smile. He didn't believe her. He saw an opportunity to walk to the piano. Her legs trembled with each step. As she sat on the bench, her mind raced. She knew this wasn't a gesture of kindness. It was an attempt to humiliate her. Something within her refused to back down entirely. Closing her eyes, she let her fingers touch the keys. The first note was hesitant. It quickly grew stronger. It was a melody she knew well, filled with emotion and intensity. The once bustling room fell into a hushed silence. Elisa's fingers danced across the keys. The music, long buried within her, erupted with unexpected power. Harry, the pianist, didn't show up. Elisa felt a surge of pride. "Can you play?" Harry asked, his gaze fixed on her. Elisa felt a flutter in her stomach. It had been years since she had touched a piano. Harry's intense gaze demanded an answer. "I don't know how to play," she replied, her voice hesitant. Harry gave a cold smile. He didn't believe her. He saw an opportunity. The man who had started with a mocking smile saw his expression shift. He hadn't expected this. He hadn't expected the waitress, whom he had underestimated, to captivate the entire room with her music. As the final note faded, the silence was deafening. Elisa opened her eyes slowly, meeting a room full of people. The pianist didn't show up. Elisa was amazed. She didn't know if she could play. Elisa felt nervous. It had been years since she touched a piano. Harry looked at her in a way that made her feel like she had to answer his question. "I don't know how to play," she said, feeling nervous. Harry smiled. He didn't believe her. He saw that the others in the room were also amazed. Some people clapped. Others looked surprised. Then, someone clapped. Everyone in the room clapped. Elisa's heart raced. She felt proud. She hadn't felt that way for years. Harry looked at her from across the room. The pianist didn't show up. Elisa was intrigued. She played. She hadn't touched a piano in years. Harry looked at her intently, waiting for an answer. "I'm a little nervous," she said. Unsure. Harry gave a cold smile. He didn't believe her. He saw an opportunity. He stood still, arms crossed, looking mysterious. "Interesting," he said to himself as the applause continued. The sound of clapping still echoed in Elisa's mind as she stepped away from the piano. Her legs were shaky. She wanted to disappear into the shadows, escaping the unwanted attention that moment had brought. But before she could move, a firm voice interrupted her thoughts. "Wait," Harry said. "Just steps away." His voice was low but authoritative. It silenced the murmurs around them. Elisa turned slowly, her heart pounding. He approached with the same confident stride. The pianist didn't show up. Elisa was intrigued. "Can you play?" Elisa felt a flutter in her stomach. It had been years since she touched a piano. Harry's intense gaze demanded an answer. "I'm a little nervous," she replied hesitantly. Harry gave a cold smile. He didn't believe her. He saw an opportunity. His eyes fixed on her. Around them, the guests whispered, curious about what would happen next. "Where did that talent come from?" he asked, studying her as if trying to solve a puzzle. "I just learned when I was younger," Elisa replied, avoiding his gaze. "And what happened? Why are you serving tables instead of performing on stage?" The question stirred something deep within her. It felt as though he was probing a wound she had worked hard to keep hidden. Elisa lifted her gaze, meeting Harry's cold eyes. "Life happened," she said simply. Her voice was steady. Despite the pianist didn't show up. Elisa was intrigued. "Can you play?" Elisa felt a flutter in her stomach. It had been years since she touched a piano. Harry's intense gaze demanded an answer. "I'm a little nervous," she replied hesitantly. Harry gave a cold smile. He didn't believe her. He saw an opportunity to Harry raised an eyebrow, surprised by her straightforward response. Few people dared to speak to him that way. Before he could reply, one of the organizers called him, pulling his attention away from Elisa. Taking advantage of the moment, she stepped back, ready to return to work. But before she could disappear, a firm hand grasped her arm. "Wait here," he said. Elisa knew it wasn't a suggestion. She stood still, watching as he discussed something with the organizer. She couldn't understand why he seemed so interested. The pianist didn't show up. Elisa was intrigued. "Can you play?" Elisa felt a flutter in her stomach. It had been years since she touched a piano. Harry's intense gaze demanded an answer. "I'm a little nervous," she replied, hesitantly. Harry gave a cold smile. He didn't believe her. He saw an opportunity in her music. However, something about Harry's demeanor made it clear that he wasn't the kind of man to leave things to chance. A few minutes later, he returned. His eyes were fixed on her. "I need a pianist for an important event in 2 days. I want you to play." "Sorry, sir. I can't," Elisa began, surprised, already anticipating the complications this would bring. "Yes. You can. I'll take care of everything. You'll be there." His response was definitive, leaving no room for debate. Elisa felt a mix of indignation and nervousness. Who did he think he was, to make such decisions for her? "Mr. Montoya, I have responsibilities. I have a daughter and a sick mother. I can't just—" "What if I said I could help with that?" Harry interrupted, his tone emotionless. "I can ensure your mother gets the best care and that you won't have to worry about anything while you perform." Elisa blinked, stunned by his proposal. Was he serious? "Why?" asked her voice quieter now. "Why would you do this for someone like me?" "Because I need results, miss. You've shown me you have potential." That he offered a small smile. It lacked warmth. "Think of it as an investment." Elisa didn't know how to respond. Somehow the offer felt more like a trap than a favor. "At the same time she asked, her voice quieter now. "Why would you do this for someone like me?" "Because I need results," he replied. "Miss, you've shown me you have potential." He offered a small smile. It lacked warmth. "Think of it as an investment," he said. Elisa didn't know how to respond. Somehow, the offer felt more like a trap than a favor. At the same time, she couldn't ignore the possibility of easing her daily burdens. "Can I have until tomorrow to decide?" she asked, trying to buy some time. "Until tomorrow." Harry nodded slowly. "Don't be late." He walked away without saying another word, leaving Elisa with a storm of thoughts. That night, as she walked home through the quiet streets, she felt the weight of Harry's proposal on her shoulders. When she reached the small apartment she shared with her mother and Sophia, she found her mother lying on the couch coughing softly while Sophia played with a sketchbook. "Mommy," Sophia shouted, running to hug her. Elisa pulled her daughter into her arms, feeling a pang of guilt. She wished she had more time to spend with her. Life was hard. She tried not to let Sophia see how hard it was. "How was work?" her mother asked, sounding weak, intense. "As usual," Elisa replied, smiling. As she put her coat on a chair, she sat next to her mother, holding her hand. The doctor had said. Elisa was worried about not being able to spend more time with her. Life was hard. She did her best to shield Sophia from realizing just how hard it was. "How was work?" her mother asked. "Sounding weak." "Intense." "As usual," Elisa replied, forcing a smile as she draped her coat over a chair. She sat beside her mother, holding her frail hand. The treatments were essential. The costs were becoming increasingly difficult to manage. "I met someone today." Elisa began hesitantly. "He wants me to play piano at an event." Her mother's eyes widened. A glimmer of hope flickered in them. "Elisa. That's wonderful. You've always been so talented. I'm not sure I should accept." "Mom. This man. He doesn't seem like someone who does things without expecting something in return. Sometimes opportunities come from where we least expect them, dear. Think about what this could mean for you." "Sophia," Elisa sighed, glancing at her daughter, who had fallen asleep on a small mattress in the corner of the room. She knew her mother was right. The next day, Elisa arrived at Harry's office, located on one of the top floors of a luxurious downtown building. He was seated behind a glass desk, reviewing documents. He looked up as soon as she entered. "Have you made your decision?" he asked bluntly. Elisa took a deep breath. "Yes, sir. I'll do it." Harry nodded as if he'd already known her answer. "Good. I expect nothing less than perfection." His tone felt more like a command. Elisa realized she was stepping into something far from simple, but for the first time in years, she felt there might be a chance to change her life. As Elisa left Harry's office, the weight of her decision settled on her. Her heart was still racing. Her mind wavered between the hope that this opportunity could ease her struggles, the fear that it might be another trap. As the elevator descended, she caught her reflection in the mirrored doors. Her eyes showed exhaustion, also a spark of determination. Hadn't felt in a long time. When she returned home that evening, she found her mother trying to put Sophia to sleep, a task that was always challenging. Elisa approached quietly, picking Sophia up and singing softly, until the little girl's eyes finally closed. After laying her down on the mattress, her mother watched her with curiosity. "You accepted, didn't you?" her mother asked. Her voice tired but full of interest. Elisa nodded. "Yes. He wants me to play in 2 days. You'll do great, dear. Music has always been a part of you," Elisa wanted to believe. The weight of responsibility felt overwhelming after making sure her mother and Sophia were settled. She sat alone at the kitchen table. It was the only time of day she could think without interruptions. She needed to prepare. After so much time away from the piano, did she still have the skill of performance like this demanded? The next day, Elisa went to the hotel to practice. Harry had arranged for a space to be reserved for life was hard. She did her best to shield Sophia from realizing just how hard it was. "How was work?" her mother asked, her voice weak. "Intense. As usual," Elisa replied, forcing a smile as she draped her coat over a chair. She sat beside her mother, holding her frail hand. The doctor had said, her practice. When she arrived, she saw a grand piano in the empty hall. The place felt intimidating. It also offered the privacy she needed to focus. Sitting down at the bench, she let her fingers glide over the keys as if trying to recall the sensation of playing regularly. The first melody that came to her mind was a classical. Elisa was not able to spend more time with her. Life was hard. She did her best to protect Sophia from realizing just how hard it was. "How was work?" her mother asked. Sounding weak. Intense. As usual. Elisa replied, forcing a smile as she draped her coat over a chair. She sat beside her mother, holding her frail hand. The doctor had said. Piece she had learned as a teenager. The music started tentatively. Gradually gained form. Each note brought back memories of who she had been before her life had changed so drastically. Midway through the piece, she heard footsteps behind her. She stopped immediately, turning to see Harry standing near the entrance. Arms crossed. Watching her. Continue, he said. His tone more of a command than a request. Elisa hesitated. Resumed playing. This time trying to ignore his presence. When she finished the piece, Harry walked closer. His eyes analyzing every detail. That was acceptable. I expect more from the performance. Don't play as if you're alone. Play as if you want to be in control. Elisa felt frustrated and challenged by his words. Who was he to tell her how to play? There was something in the way he spoke. As if he saw something in her that even she couldn't recognize. I'll do my best. Sir, she replied calmly. Harry gave a slight smile. I expect you to. The next 2 days. Elisa practiced whenever she could. She divided her time between caring for Sophia, helping her mother, rehearsing at the hotel each time she sat at the piano. She felt like she was rediscovering something she had lost, but she also knew the pressure was building with every moment. On the morning of the event, her mother insisted that she rest a little before leaving. You need to have a clear mind. Elisa. This is your moment. Elisa smiled. Grateful for her mother's support. Thank you. Mom. That means so much to me. She left home feeling a mix of nerves and anticipation. When she arrived at the hotel, she was taken to an improvised dressing room, where an elegant dress had been left for her. It was a simple but sophisticated black gown. Something she could never have afforded. She quickly put it on and looked in the mirror, for a moment. She barely recognized herself, when she was finally called to the hall. Her legs felt unsteady, the room was packed with elegant people. Guests chatted and laughed. Unaware of the inner struggle she faced, Harry was at the back of the room, talking with some investors. When their eyes met, he gave her a subtle nod, signaling that it was time to begin. Elisa walked to the piano. Under the guests' curious gazes, she sat on the bench, closing her eyes. The guests chatted and laughed, not knowing about the inner struggle she was facing. Harry was at the back of the room, talking with some investors. When their eyes met, he gave her a subtle nod, signaling that it was time to begin. Elisa walked to the piano. With the guests' curious gazes on her, she sat on the bench, closing her eyes for a moment to take a deep breath. Then, she placed her fingers on the keys and began to play. The music started softly, almost timidly, soon grew in strength. Elisa felt the melody flow through her hands, each note filled with emotion. She played as if she were telling her story, as if each chord revealed parts of her soul. Guests chatted and laughed, not knowing about the inner struggle she was facing. Harry was at the back of the room, talking with some investors. When they looked at each other, he gave her a subtle nod, signaling that it was time to begin. Elisa walked to the piano. The guests watched her curiously. She sat on the bench, closing her eyes. At first, the chatter in the room continued. It gradually faded. The guests stopped to listen, Some watching in admiration. Others clearly surprised. Harry stood still on the other side of the room. His eyes fixed on her. When the final note faded, the silence was total. Elisa slowly opened her eyes. Meeting the gaze of the guests, chatted and laughed. Unaware of the internal battle she was facing. Harry was at the back of the room, talking with some investors. When their eyes met, he gave her a subtle nod, signaling that it was time to begin. Elisa walked to the piano. Under the curious gazes of the guests, she sat on the bench, closing her eyes. Then, a single applause broke the silence, followed by another, until the entire room erupted in a standing ovation. She stood there, frozen, as the sound of the applause washed over her. She had never felt so vulnerable, yet so alive. Harry approached her slowly, stopping at her side. At first, he said nothing, simply looking. Guests chatted and laughed, unaware of the inner conflict she was facing. Harry was at the back of the room, talking with some investors. When their eyes met, he gave her a subtle nod, signaling that it was time to begin. Elisa walked to the piano. Under the curious gazes of the guests, she sat on the bench, closing her eyes with an expression she couldn't decipher. "That was impressive," said Mr. Smith in a low, almost gentle voice. "But I hope you realize this is only the beginning." Elisa didn't respond. She knew this moment marked the start of something new in her life. She had no idea where it would lead. The sound of the applause, guests chatted and laughed, unaware of the internal battle she was facing. Harry was at the back of the room, talking with some investors. When their eyes met, he gave her a subtle nod, signaling that it was time to begin. Elisa walked to the piano. Under the curious gazes of the guests, she sat on the bench, closing her eyes. Still echoed in Elisa's mind as she left the hall that night. What had begun as an imposition had turned into a revealing experience. For the first time in years, she felt seen. As though her music had the power to express everything words never could. On her way back home, Elisa thought about Sophia and her mother. Maybe, just maybe, this could be the start of something new for them. What exactly did it mean? Elisa wasn't sure when she arrived at their small apartment. She found her mother awake, waiting anxiously. "How did it go?" her mother asked, her voice filled with anticipation. Elisa placed her bag on the table and smiled, still trying to process everything that had happened. "It was unlike anything I've ever experienced, Mom. People liked it. I did it." Her mother held her hands, her eyes shining with emotion. "I knew you could do it. Music has always been a part of you. Don't let it slip away again." "Elisa, it's not that simple," Elisa replied hesitantly. Harry doesn't seem like. Guests chatted and laughed, unaware of the internal battle she was facing. Harry was at the back of the room, talking with some investors. When their eyes met, he gave her a subtle nod, signaling that it was time to begin. Elisa walked to the piano. Under the curious gazes of the guests, she sat on the bench, closing her eyes. She was the type of person who does something without expecting something in return. "He's complicated." Her mother frowned. "Maybe he sees something in you that you don't see in yourself yet. Sometimes people surprise us." Elisa didn't reply. In her mind, Harry remained an enigma. He had put her in this unexpected position. He was also guests chatted and laughed. Unaware of the inner conflict she was facing. Harry was at the back of the room. Talking with some investors. When their eyes met. He gave her a subtle nod. Signaling that it was time to begin. Elisa walked to the piano. Under the curious gazes of the guests. She sat on the bench. Closing her eyes. The next morning. Elisa went to the hotel to return the dress they had lent her. She didn't expect to see Harry. There he was in the main hall. Giving instructions to his staff. When he noticed her. He gestured for her to approach. "Mr. Montoya. I just came to return the dress. Keep it. Consider it a gift." Guests chatted and laughed. Unaware of the inner conflict she was facing. Harry was at the back of the room. Talking with some investors. When their eyes met. He gave her a subtle nod. Signaling that it was time to begin. Elisa walked to the piano. Under the curious gazes of the guests. She sat on the bench. Closing her eyes. "I can't accept this." He interrupted casually. "Accept it. Elisa. It's just a dress. Now. Sit down." He motioned to a chair beside him. Elisa hesitated but complied. Harry looked at her directly. His eyes assessing. "You have talent. Something's missing. It's not just about technique. Elisa. Music needs something more." She stared at him. Guests chatted and laughed. Unaware of the internal battle she was facing. Harry was at the back of the room. Talking with some investors. When their eyes met. He gave her a subtle nod. Signaling that it was time to begin. Elisa walked to the piano. Under the curious gazes of the guests. She sat on the bench. Closing her eyes. Confused. What exactly is this? Something more. Harry gave a small smile. Passion. You played well last night. It felt like you were holding back. Like you were afraid of something. Elisa didn't know how to respond. He was right. Admitting it to him felt like giving him an upper hand. "I just need more practice," she said. He tried to change the subject. She said, "No. You need more confidence." Before she could reply. He said. "I want you to play again in a week. It's bigger and more important. You'll be there." Elisa's eyes widened. "I don't know if I can do this." Harry shrugged. "You can. It's just a decision." He walked away. Leaving her alone with her thoughts. Let's play a little game for those reading the comments. Type hot dog below. Only those who made it this far will get it. Now. Let's continue the story. In the days that followed. Elisa threw herself into rehearsals. In the mornings. She cared for Sophia and her mother. Ensuring everything. She made sure everything was ready before heading to practice. Her mother constantly encouraged her. While Sophia watched. Sketching pianos and musical notes in her notebook. "Mommy. I want to see you play one day," Sophia said. Holding one of her drawings, Elisa smiled and hugged her. "One day you will. My little one. I promise." At the hotels. In the hall of the hotel. The rehearsals continued. Elisa was determined to do better this time. The music began to flow more naturally. She felt like she was gradually reconnecting with the passion she had lost. Harry observed her occasionally. Never interfered. He seemed content to watch her progress. Though he maintained his usual cold demeanor. The rehearsals continued. Elisa was determined to do better this time. The music began to flow more naturally. She felt like she was gradually reconnecting with the passion she had lost. Harry observed her occasionally but never interfered. He seemed content to watch her progress, though he maintained his usual cold and distant demeanor. During one rehearsal, he finally approached her. "It's better," he said, crossing his arms. "But I still want more." Elisa stopped playing and looked at him, frustrated. "More what exactly? Do you want me to play with my eyes closed? Jump on the keys? What else do you want from me?" Harry stared at her, surprised by the outburst. A faint smile appeared on his lips, finally. "Some emotion, that's what I'm talking about, use it," she huffed. "Irritated that you're impossible and you're getting better at this," that he shot back. Turning and leaving before she could say anything else, Elisa sat there, staring at the piano, feeling her frustration boil over, but as she placed her hands back on the keys, she realized he was right. She played with more intensity, infusing each note with emotion. The difference was unmistakable. On the day of the event, the hall was more crowded than ever. Elisa felt her nerves mounting as the moment approached. She was in the dressing room, adjusting her dress in a formal manner. During one rehearsal, he finally approached her. "It's better," he said, crossing his arms. "But I still want more." Elisa stopped playing and looked at him, frustrated. "More what? Exactly? Do you want me to play with my eyes closed? Jump on the keys? What else do you want from me?" Harry stared at her, surprised by her outburst. Dress when there was a knock at the door. "Come in," she said, assuming it was an assistant. To her surprise, it was Harry. "Are you ready?" he asked. Straightforward. "I think so," she replied, trying to keep her composure. He looked at her for a moment, as if trying to read her thoughts. "Remember, Elisa, you're here because you deserve to." He had a distant look on his face during one rehearsal. "It's better," he said, crossing his arms. "But I still want more." Elisa stopped playing and looked at him, frustrated. "More what? Exactly? Do you want me to play with my eyes closed? Jump on the keys? What else do you want from me?" Harry stared at her, surprised by her outburst. "Now go and show them." His words were direct. There was something in the way he spoke that felt almost kind. Elisa nodded, taking a deep breath, before leaving the dressing room. As she entered the hall, the murmurs ceased. All eyes turned to her as she walked toward the piano. She sat down, closed her eyes for a moment. He had a distant look on his face during one rehearsal. "It's better," he said, crossing his arms. "But I still want more." Elisa stopped playing and looked at him, frustrated. "More what? Exactly? Do you want me to play with my eyes closed? Jump on the keys? What else do you want from me?" Harry stared at her, surprised by the outburst. Then he began to play. This time there was no hesitation. Elisa played with all the intensity within her. Each note told her story of struggle, sacrifice, love. The audience was completely silent, fully captivated by the music. When the last note faded, the room erupted into applause. Elisa opened her eyes, feeling a wave of relief and satisfaction. At the back of the room, Harry watched with a faint smile, looking pleased. After the performance, Many guests approached to praise her. Elisa was exhausted but radiant. She felt like she was finally reclaiming something she had lost. As the hall began to empty, Harry approached her. "Congratulations. You're starting." She looked at him, still unsure of his true intentions. This time she didn't feel intimidated. "Thank you, Mr. Montoya." He shook his head, almost smiling. "Call me Harry." After the event, Elisa reflected on everything that had happened. Harry had shown a more human side throughout the evening. Although he remained mysterious, she started to realize there was more to his controlled and cold attitude. He seemed really interested in her music. The next day, Elisa was at home taking care of Sophia and her mother despite the success of the performance. Her reality remained the same, her mother's illness required constant care. Sophia's playful smile always reminded him of his responsibility as a single parent. As she played with Sophia on the floor, the sound of the phone ringing pulled her from her thoughts. It was an assistant from the hotel, Miss Elisa. "Mr. Montoya wants to see you at the hotel this afternoon. He wants to discuss." She had a distant demeanor. During one rehearsal, he finally approached her. "It's better," he said, crossing his arms. "But I still want more." Elisa stopped playing and looked at him, frustrated. "More what? Exactly? Do you want me to play with my eyes closed? Jump on the keys? What else do you want from me?" Harry stared at her, surprised by her outburst. "Something important?" he asked, feeling a mix of curiosity and apprehension. "No," she replied. "He only mentioned that it's a delicate and urgent matter." Elisa hung up the phone and sighed. Harry was never straightforward with his intentions. It unsettled her. After ensuring her mother and Sophia were comfortable, she went to the hotel, feeling that something important was about to happen. When she arrived, she was led to Harry's office. He stood by the window, looking out as if thinking about the world below. As Elisa entered, he turned slowly, his expression neutral. "Thank you for coming. You didn't leave me much of a choice." "Did you?" she replied, crossing her arms. A slight smile appeared on the corner of Harry's lips. He quickly returned to his serious tone. "I want to talk about the future." Elisa frowned, confused. "My future?" "Yes. What do you want for yourself?" "I'm not talking about money or stability. I want to know what you truly desire." Elisa was taken aback by the question. It was something she rarely allowed herself to think about. Her life had always revolved around responsibilities and survival, but after a moment of reflection, she answered, "I want my music to be heard. I want my daughter to see that I fought for my dreams and that she can do the same." Harry nodded, seeming, "That's good. And that's exactly why I want to help you achieve it." Elisa stared at him, suspicious. "Help me? Why?" "Because you have talent. You remind me of what it means to fight for something." Elisa felt the weight of his words. It was the first time Harry revealed something. "I'm organizing a charity event for important investors. I want you to be the star of the night." "A charity event? Why me?" "Because you have something others don't. Your music is authentic. That's rare." "I'm not sure I understand." "I'll explain. But first, I want you to know that I'm serious about helping you achieve your goals." Elisa hesitated. The offer was tempting. She wasn't sure she could accept it. He was about to say something. Then he stopped. I'm organizing a charity event for important investors. I want you to be the star of the night. A charity event? Why me? Because you have something others don't. Your music is authentic. That's rare. Alisa hesitated. The offer was tempting. Also intimidating. What if I fail? Then fail. At least you'll have tried. His words resonated deeply with her. For the first time, Alisa felt that someone believed in her potential. Even if it was Harry Montoya. The most difficult man to decipher she had ever met. The days that followed were intense. Alisa threw herself into rehearsals with renewed determination. With each note, she felt she was rebuilding parts of herself that had been forgotten. During breaks, Harry often appeared to watch. He rarely commented. His constant presence was strangely reassuring. One afternoon, as Alisa played a particularly challenging piece, Harry finally broke the silence. Why did you stop playing, Alisa? She paused, surprised by the question. My life changed. I had to stop playing to take care of my family. Harry stared at her, his eyes showing a depth she couldn't fully understand. You give up everything for the people you love. Right? Alisa simply nodded. Yes. Everyone would do the same. Harry looked away. As if thinking about something. Not everyone would. Alisa felt like there was more to his words. She didn't push him. The day of the charity event finally arrived. Alisa wore a fancy navy blue dress, provided by the hotel. As she looked at herself in the mirror, she felt more and more nervous. She was facing the largest audience she had ever had. She felt overwhelmed by the high expectations. When she arrived at the venue, she was amazed by how big the event was. The bright lights and the excited chatter of the crowd made her nervous. She took a deep breath and reminded herself why she was there. Harry found her just before she was supposed to go on stage. He looked calm. His eyes showed he was worried a little. Are you ready? He asked. Alisa nodded, even though she wasn't completely sure. I'll do my best, she said. Harry put his hand on her shoulder, which was a nice, unexpected gesture. Don't worry about being perfect. Just be yourself, he said. Those words made Alisa feel much better. She had a lot of courage. When her name was announced, she walked to the piano. The audience watched her closely. She began to play. As always, the first notes were not very confident. As the music continued, Alisa let herself be carried by the melody. Each chord was filled with emotion, as though she was sharing her story through the music. Music. The hall fell silent. Everyone was captivated. When the final note finished playing, the audience clapped and stood up to show their appreciation. Alisa stood, overwhelmed with emotion. Her eyes met Harry's at the back of the room. He stood there with a faint smile on his face. She always knew she could do this. After the event, many guests congratulated her. Alisa was tired but happy. For the first time, she felt like she was on a new path. One that music had opened for her. Harry appeared at the end of the night holding 2 glasses of champagne. It was a success, he said, handing her one. A glass to you, Alisa said sincerely. No. To you, Harry replied. They toasted, and for a moment, Alisa felt something had shifted between them. Harry Montoya wasn't just the distant, cold businessman she had imagined. There was more to him. Something she was beginning to understand. Following the success of the charity event, Elisa felt like she was living in a dream. The first time in a long time. She saw real possibilities in front of her. Her music had touched people in ways she never thought possible. Deep down, she knew this was only the beginning. The next morning, as she made breakfast for Sophia and prepared her mother's medications, she smiled slightly. She remembered the applause. She knew that, in real life, she had to be realistic. "Mommy, I saw you playing in my dream," Sophia said as she ate breakfast. Elisa knelt beside her and brushed her hair gently. "What did you think?" "My love. You were so beautiful." Everyone clapped. "You're a music princess," the little girl said, her eyes sparkling. Elisa laughed and kissed her daughter on the forehead. "I do it all for you," she said. At that moment, her mother entered the room, leaning on her cane. Despite her illness, her eyes glowed with pride. "You played beautifully," she said. "Elisa, your music moves people. It inspires them. Don't forget that." Elisa smiled. Before she could respond, her phone rang. When she answered, Harry's familiar voice came through. "Good morning. Elisa, that I need you to come to the hotel this afternoon. That I want to discuss your next performance." "Next performance?" she asked, blinking in surprise. "Yes. Did you think this would end with one event? Get ready. We've only just begun." Before she could reply, he hung up. Elisa stared at the phone. Confused and a bit nervous, Harry had a way of making everything feel like a mystery. She never knew what to expect from him that afternoon. Elisa arrived at the hotel. Harry was waiting in the main hall. A few of his colleagues were with him. He waved them away as soon as Elisa arrived. He looked serious, which made her nervous. He also seemed different that day. He looked more relaxed. Almost human. "Sit down, Elisa. I wanted to discuss something, ideas." She sat at the table, watching as he organized a few papers. Then he placed a contract in front of her. "This is an agreement for your participation in an annual event we host for our top investors. It's a big opportunity for you." Elisa flipped through the pages, confused. "A contract? Harry, I'm not sure I'm ready for something so formal." "You are ready. You just need to believe it," he replied, leaning forward. "Listen. I see potential in you. Maybe more than you see in yourself. This contract is just the beginning." She looked at him. Hesitant, she knew the proposal was incredible. It also scared her. Signing that contract meant diving headfirst into a world she barely knew. "This isn't just about music, is it?" she asked, meeting his gaze directly. Harry smiled, his eyes intense. "No, Elisa. It's about you. About what you can achieve. Honestly, about how your music can be so much bigger than you imagine." His words struck something deep inside her. The first time Elisa saw vulnerable ideas. She sat at the table watching as he organized a few papers. Then he placed a contract in front of her. "This is an agreement for your participation in an annual event we host for our top investors. It's a big opportunity for you." Elisa flipped through the pages, confused. "Harry, I'm not sure I'm ready for something like this." "I'm here to support you," one side of Harry said, genuinely believing in her. After a few moments of silence, she picked up the pen and signed. "I won't let you down," she said, trying to sound confident. "I know you won't," he replied, standing and shaking her hand. In the days that followed, Harry became more directly involved in Elisa's rehearsals. He watched closely, offering precise comments on her technique and stage presence. At first, Elisa found his presence intimidating. She soon realized he truly cared about her performance. "You need to stop overthinking," he said during one rehearsal. "Let the music flow. Play as if no one is listening." "Easy for you to say," she shot back. Exasperated. "You're not the one in the spotlight." Harry smiled, crossing his arms. "You think I don't know pressure? Everything I do is under scrutiny. You know what? I turn it into fuel. You should do the same." Elisa rolled her eyes. Deep down, she knew he was right. Gradually, she started to take his advice. Her music became more ideas. She sat at the table watching as he organized a few papers. Then he placed a contract in front of her. "This is an agreement for your participation in an annual event we host for our top investors. It's a big opportunity for you." Elisa flipped through the pages, confused. "Harry, I'm not sure I'm ready for something so emotional and captivating." During their time together, something unexpected began to happen. Elisa started to see Harry in a new light. He wasn't just the stern businessman she had met. He was someone with his own demons and insecurities. To her surprise, Harry seemed to be changing as well. He became more considerate and less critical, as if Elisa's presence was influencing him as much as he was influencing her. One evening, after a long rehearsal, Harry invited her to dinner at the hotel restaurant. Elisa hesitated but accepted, thinking it might be an opportunity to better understand his intentions. As they dined, their conversation flowed surprisingly. Ideas. She sat at the table, watching as he organized a few papers. Then he placed a contract in front of her. "This is an agreement for your participation in an annual event we host for our top investors. It's a big opportunity for you." Elisa flipped through the pages, confused. "A contract? Harry, I'm not sure I'm ready for something." Well, Harry shared stories of his childhood. He said that losing his parents at a young age forced him to grow up quickly and build his own empire. Elisa, in turn, talked about her struggles as a single mother and how music had been her only escape. "I admire your strength," Harry said suddenly, looking directly at her. "You've been ideas." She sat at the table, watching as he organized a few papers. Then he placed a contract in front of her. "This is an agreement for your participation in an annual event we host for our top investors. It's a big opportunity for you." Elisa flipped through the pages, confused. "Harry, I'm not sure I'm ready for something so big. You've never given up, even though you've been through so much. It's inspiring." Elisa felt her cheeks flush. "I just do what needs to be done. There's no other choice." "There are always choices," he replied with a slight smile. "You just pick the hardest. Also the most rewarding path." In that moment, something shifted between them. The air felt lighter. Ideas. She sat at the table, watching as he organized a few papers. Then he placed a contract in front of her. "This is an agreement for your participation in an annual event we host for our top investors. It's a big opportunity for you." Elisa flipped through the pages, confused. "A contract? Harry, I'm not sure I'm ready for something Both realized a connection was forming. Something neither of them had anticipated. As the weeks passed, Elisa's rehearsals became more intense. The hotel's annual gala was approaching. She knew she had to deliver her best performance. However, her growing closeness to Harry became a distraction. Every glance, every casual ideas. She sat at the table watching as he organized a few papers. Then he placed a contract in front of her. "This is an agreement for your participation in an annual event we host for our top investors. It's a big opportunity for you." Elisa looked at the pages. Confused. "Harry. I'm not sure I'm ready for something." The conversation seemed to carry an emotional weight she didn't know how to handle. One day, as she practiced alone in the empty hall, Harry entered quietly and watched from a distance. When she finished, he approached, clapping softly. "That was amazing," he said, as he walked closer. "But I still feel like something's missing." "What now?" she asked. Harry smiled, feeling annoyed. He stopped in front of her. "You're holding back your emotions. Let them out. Act like you're telling me something you can't say with words." Elisa stared at him, feeling a lump in her throat. Harry was so close that she could feel his breath. She felt like she should trust him. She was still afraid. "It's not that simple. I know. You're stronger than you think." Elisa felt a lump in her throat. "But you're not letting me do that." Harry stepped away. "What's going on?" "I don't know." "You're not going to tell me you're nervous?" "No." "You're not 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 nervous?" The annual event. Elisa was more nervous than ever. The hall was packed and expectations were high. As she placed her hands on the piano, she remembered Harry's words. "Play as if you're telling something you can't put into words." That's exactly what she did. Each note, every chord was filled with emotion. Her music filled the annual event made Elisa nervous. The hall was filled with people. They had high hopes for her performance. But as she sat down at the piano, she remembered Harry's words, "Play as if you're telling something you can't put into words." And that's exactly what she did. Each note and chord was filled with emotion. Her music filled the hall, leaving everyone mesmerized. When she finished, the audience clapped and cheered. But Elisa looked around, searching for just one person. Harry stood at the back of the room, smiling faintly. At that moment, Elisa knew something had changed between them forever. The night of the event had been a milestone for Elisa. The applause and the hall was filled with people. Everyone was amazed. When she finished, the audience clapped. She looked for just one person. Harry was standing at the back of the room, smiling a little. At that moment, Elisa knew something had changed between them forever. The night of the event had been a very important night for Elisa. The applause and the audience's approval still echoed in her mind. But what left her most unsettled was Harry's gaze at the end of her performance. It was a mix of admiration and something more. Something she couldn't define. It made her heart race. The next morning, while taking care of her mother and getting Sophia ready for school, her thoughts lingered on what had happened. Despite the intensity of the moment, her reality remained the same. She still had to support her family and manage her responsibilities, which never seemed to get easier. Her mother, who had been watching Elisa closely, broke the silence. "You seem different, my dear." Elisa turned, surprised by the comment. Carmen felt lighter, as if something good was starting to happen in her life. She smiled. Then she grew serious. "I just hope you remember to take care of your heart. You deserve to be happy. Don't forget who you are." Elisa took her mother's hand and moved. She knew Carmen was right. Whatever was developing between her and Harry, there was still a big difference between their worlds. Later at the hotel, Harry seemed more focused than usual. He talked about details of a new event with his team. His attention kept going toward Elisa whenever she entered the room. It was as if her presence was a force he couldn't ignore. After a meeting, he called her into his office. His office. "We need to talk," he said, closing the door behind her. "About what?" Elisa asked, sitting in a chair across from his large glass desk. Harry didn't respond immediately. He walked to the window, staring out at the cityscape. "About us." Elisa's heart raced. She wasn't prepared for this conversation. Something in his posture suggested he was struggling to find the right words. "Us?" she asked, trying to stay calm. Harry turned to face her, his eyes full of intensity. "Since the day you first played that piano, something changed. Not just how I see you, how I see myself." He took a step closer. "You've made me question things I never thought I questioned," thoughts about her life. Elisa blinked, surprised. She felt the same way. She hadn't expected Harry to say it so openly. "Harry, we live in completely different worlds. I have Sophia, my mother. You have an empire to run. Maybe it's those different worlds that make us want to try. As for Sophia and your mother, your strength, your dedication, they're part of what makes me attracted to you. I admire that more than you know." Elisa felt tears well up in her eyes. Before she could respond, Harry continued. "I'm not asking anything of you right now. I just want you to know how I feel." A moment. Silence hung between them. Finally, "Elisa." She took a deep breath and replied. "I need time. There's so much at stake," he said. nodding and respecting her response. Take all the time you need. I just want you to know I'm here. In the days that followed, their relationship grew closer. Harry remained a dedicated businessman but always found ways to be near Elisa. Whether watching, he would help her prepare for her performances and help her with her responsibilities. One day, he surprised her by showing up at her home with flowers for her mother and a small gift for Sophia. I thought it would be polite to meet your family, since I'm now part of your professional life, he said, smiling. Carmen was delighted by Harry's. She made a gesture, looked at him closely, as if trying to understand his intentions. Sophia, on the other hand, loved the gift and quickly held on to Harry's leg, calling him Mommy's friend. As they sat in a small living room drinking coffee, Carmen decided to speak. You seem like a good man, Harry. I want you to know my daughter. She has been through a lot. If your intentions aren't good, it's better for you to leave now. Elisa was shocked by her mother's directness. Harry simply laughed, seemingly enjoying her honesty. I understand your concern, Mrs. Carmen. I promise you that my intentions are the best. After he left, Elisa approached her mother, still embarrassed. Mom, why did you say that? You deserve someone who treats you like the incredible woman you are. I just wanted to make sure he knows that. Elisa sighed. She knew her mother only wanted to protect her. Part of her was starting to believe that Harry might truly be different. With the next big event at the hotel approaching, Harry suggested that Elisa compose something new for the occasion. At first, she hesitated. Soon realized this was an opportunity to showcase a new side of her talent. During the long hours of rehearsal, Harry often surprised her by bringing coffee or simply sitting beside her while she worked on her compositions. What do you think of this? She asked one day, playing a few notes of a melody she had been working on. Harry listened closely, never taking his eyes off of her hands. It's beautiful, he said. But I feel like you're holding something back. What are you trying to hide? Elisa, she said, stopping suddenly because she was startled by his insight. Maybe I'm trying to protect something, she whispered. Harry leaned in, placing his hand over hers. You don't have to protect yourself from me. The connection between them seemed to grow stronger each day. Elisa still wrestled with her fears, there was so much at stake. She knew that opening her heart to Harry completely would, I'm trying to protect something, she whispered. Harry leaned in, placing his hand over hers. You don't have to protect yourself from me, he said. The connection between them seemed to grow stronger each day. Elisa still wrestled with her fears. There was so much at stake. She knew that opening her heart to Harry completely would be a huge risk. On the night of the event, Elisa stepped onto the stage to perform her new composition. The melody was a blend of hope and vulnerability, reflecting the emotions she had been experiencing in recent weeks. As she played, her eyes met Harry's at the back of the room. He was watching her with an intensity. On the night of the event, Elisa stepped onto the stage to perform her new song. The song blended hope and vulnerability, reflecting her recent emotions. As she played, her eyes met Harry's at the back of the room. He was watching her with intensity, which made her heart race. In that moment, she knew she could no longer ignore her feelings. When she finished, the audience gave her a standing ovation. All she could see was Harry walking toward her. He approached, took her hand, led her to a quieter corner. "You were incredible," he said, looking straight into her. That made her heart race. In that moment, she knew she could no longer ignore what she felt. When she finished, the audience gave her a standing ovation. All she could see was Harry walking toward her. He approached, took her hand, led her to a quieter corner. "You were incredible," he said, looking straight into her eyes. "Thank you. I couldn't have done it without your support," she replied, feeling her cheeks flush. Harry smiled. His expression quickly turned serious. "I don't want to wait anymore. I know you have doubts. I need you to know that I'm here, ready to face anything with you." Elisa felt tears well up in her eyes. This time they were tears of happiness. "That I don't want to wait anymore either, Harry." Before she could say another word, he pulled her into a kiss. That it was a moment full of emotion. As if all the barriers that had kept them apart finally dissolved, the days following the event and their first kiss were filled with a that made her heart race. One afternoon, she knew she could no longer ignore what she felt. When she finished, the audience clapped for her. All she could see was Harry walking toward her. He approached, took her hand, led her to a quieter corner. "You were incredible," he said, looking straight into her. She felt quiet and happy. Elisa felt lighter, as if she had finally allowed herself to dream of something beyond her daily struggles. At the same time, she knew things wouldn't be simple. There was Sophia, her mother. The lingering fear of losing herself in something that might not last. Harry, on the other hand, was determined. That made her heart race. In that moment, she knew she could no longer ignore what she felt. When she finished, the audience gave her a standing ovation. All she could see was Harry walking toward her. He approached, took her hand, led her to a quieter corner. "You were incredible," he said, looking straight into her. To prove his intentions were genuine, he surprised Elisa with thoughtful gestures. Like bringing flowers for Carmen or arranging afternoons where Sophia could play in the hotel garden while Elisa rehearsed. He understood that to win Elisa's heart completely, he also had to win over the people she loved. One afternoon, that made her heart race. In that moment, she knew she could no longer ignore what she felt. When she finished, the audience clapped and cheered. All she could see was Harry walking toward her. He took her hand and led her to a quieter corner. "You were incredible," he said, looking straight into her. As Elisa practiced alone in the empty hall, Harry entered silently and sat in the back. Elisa knew he was there but pretended not to notice, focusing on the melody she was working on. It was a new piece, filled with emotion. Every note seemed to tell a story. Words couldn't express it. When she finished, Harry broke. Her heart raced. She knew she could no longer ignore her feelings. When she finished, the audience clapped and cheered. But all she could see was Harry walking toward her. He took her hand and led her to a quieter corner. "You were incredible," he said, looking straight into her eyes. Silence. Then he said, "That was magnificent." He approached her. "Every time you play, it's as if the world stops for a moment." Elisa smiled shyly. "Music is my way of saying what I can't put into words. I think it's always been like that." Harry stood beside her, looking at the piano for a moment before turning to face her. That made her heart race. In that moment, She knew she could no longer ignore what she felt. When she finished, the audience gave her a standing ovation. All she could see was Harry walking toward her. He approached, took her hand, led her to a quieter corner. "You were incredible," he said, looking straight into her. "Then tell me through your music. How do you feel right now?" Elisa was speechless. Harry's intense gaze seemed to pierce through her. She realized he was asking for more than just a melody. He wanted to know how she felt about him. Something she was still struggling to express in words. After a moment of hesitation, she began to play. The melody was soft yet filled with emotion. As it progressed, it became more intense, as if every note reflected her feelings. When she finished, Harry stood silently, his eyes glistening. "I think I understand," he said with a smile. As their relationship grew stronger, Harry became more involved in Elisa's life. He offered to help with her mother's medication and even suggested that Donna Carmen see a specialist. A treatment he insisted on paying for. Elisa hesitated at first. Harry was persistent. "This isn't charity." Elisa, "It's because I care about you and your family," Donna Carmen, however, accepted the help with. She felt grateful. She also felt a stern warning in her dad's eyes. "Harry, if you break my daughter's heart, I'll come after you myself." Harry laughed. He knew she wasn't joking. Elisa's young daughter, Sophia, also began to bond more with Harry. He often took her for walks around the hotel or played with her in the garden. During one of their hide-and-seek games, Sophia asked innocently, "Are you going to be my new daddy?" The question caught Harry off guard. He thought to himself, "And sex games?" He answered sincerely, "It depends on your mom." Sophia smiled and hugged him, as if his response was all she needed. With the next big hotel event coming up, Elisa was more determined than ever to do her best. She knew this would be an important moment. It wasn't just for her career. Also to prove to herself that she deserved everything she was achieving. Harry was with her every step of the way, encouraging her and helping her overcome her insecurities. "You're stronger than you think, Elisa. You're not alone anymore," he told her one evening as he watched her rehearse. Harry helped Elisa overcome her insecurities and believe in herself. He encouraged her, telling her, "You're stronger than you think, Elisa. You're not alone anymore." Those words stayed with Elisa. For the first time in years, she felt she had someone by her side. Someone who believed in her and was willing to fight alongside her. On the night of the event, the hall was packed. Celebrities, business leaders, music critics filled the audience, all eager to hear Elisa play. She was nervous, resolute. Before stepping onto the stage, Harry pulled her aside and said, "Remember, Elisa, play with your heart. It doesn't matter who's in the audience. This is about you and your music." She nodded, took a deep breath, approached the piano. When her hands touched the keys, she lost track of everything around her. She played the piano as well as she ever had. Each note was full of emotion and passion. The audience was completely silent and mesmerized when she finished. The reaction was immediate, a standing ovation that seemed endless. As the applause echoed through the hall, Elisa searched for Harry in the crowd. He was there, smiling proudly. A look that said more than any words could. After the event, Harry took Elisa to the hotel terrace, where a table with a candle on it was waiting for them. She was surprised but smiled. "What is this?" she asked. As he pulled out her chair. It's just a celebration, you deserve it. As they ate dinner. Harry was straightforward. Elisa. I want you to know that everything we're building together. It means a lot to me. I'm not just talking about your career. She looked at him. Her heart racing. I feel the same. Harry. I'm still scared. My life has been full of disappointments. I don't know if I'm ready to give myself completely. Harry took her hand. His gaze steady. I won't force anything. Elisa. I just want you to. I'm here. I'm willing to wait as long as it takes. The silence that followed was filled with meaning. Elisa knew there was still a long road ahead. At that moment, she allowed herself to believe that maybe, just maybe, happiness with Harry was possible. In the days that followed, their relationship deepened. Harry became. Each note was full of emotion and passion. The audience went completely silent. Mesmerized. When she finished, the reaction was immediate, a standing ovation that seemed endless. As the applause echoed through the hall, Elisa searched for Harry in the crowd. He was there. Smiling proudly. A look that said more than any words could. Harry was part of Elisa's daily life. Helping her with Sophia and Donna Carmen. Proving he was ready to take on a meaningful role in her world. In turn, Elisa began to open up more. Sharing her fears and hopes. They discovered that, despite their differences, they had much in common. Especially a desire to build something real, and each note was full of emotion and passion. The audience was completely silent and mesmerized. When she finished, they jumped to their feet and clapped for a long time. As the applause echoed through the hall, Elisa looked for Harry in the crowd. He was there. Smiling proudly. A look that said more than any words could. One night, as they tucked Sophia into bed, Harry whispered to Elisa, I feel like we found something rare, something worth fighting for. Elisa smiled. Tears welling in her eyes. I feel that too, she said. And for the first time, I'm letting myself believe that love could truly be a possibility. The days following the big event at the hotel, the atmosphere was calm and relaxing. Elisa felt she had finally found a balance between her passion for music and her blossoming relationship with Harry. He seemed determined to prove he was by her side. Not as a fleeting presence. As someone ready to build a future together. One morning, as they sat together in, each note was full of emotion and passion. The audience fell completely silent. Mesmerized. When she finished, the reaction was immediate, a standing ovation that seemed endless. As the applause echoed through the hall, Elisa searched for Harry in the crowd. He was there. Smiling proudly. A look that said more than any words could. Elisa was having breakfast in her small kitchen. Harry watched Donna Carmen closely. She sat in her armchair, sipping tea and flipping through an old magazine. How are you feeling today, Donna Carmen? He asked sincerely. She looked up, surprised by the question. Better than I expected. These medications have helped a lot. I know part of that is. Each note was full of emotion and passion. The audience went completely silent. Mesmerized. When she finished, the reaction was immediate, a standing ovation that seemed endless. As the applause echoed through the hall, Elisa searched for Harry in the crowd. He was there. Smiling proudly. A look that said more than any words could. Thanks to you, Harry, he said. Smiling. Before he could respond, Carmen continued. But don't get any ideas. If you hurt my daughter, no matter how wealthy you are, you'll have to deal with me. Elisa, who was washing dishes, let out a nervous laugh. Mom. Please, Harry said. However, took the warning in stride. I understand your concern. Donna Carmen, and I promise I'll never do anything to make Elisa or Sophia unhappy. The sincerity in his voice reassured Carmen. Though it didn't stop her from keeping her protective stance, her daughter had been through enough. She wouldn't allow her to go through that pain again. Later that day, Harry took Elisa. Each note was full of emotion and passion. The audience fell completely silent, mesmerized. When she finished, the reaction was immediate, a standing ovation that seemed endless. As the applause echoed through the hall, Elisa searched for Harry in the crowd. He was there, smiling proudly. A look that said more than any words could. Meanwhile, Sophia went to a park. He had planned a picnic, complete with simple foods and plenty of space for Sophia to play freely. Elisa was touched by the effort Harry made to bond with her daughter. Sophia seemed to grow more attached to him each day. As Sophia ran across the grass, Harry took the opportunity to speak privately with. Each note was full of emotion and passion. The audience fell completely silent, mesmerized. When she finished, the reaction was immediate, a standing ovation that seemed endless. As the applause echoed through the hall, Elisa searched for Harry in the crowd. He was there, smiling proudly. A look that said more than any words could. Elisa, I know it might seem like we're moving fast. Every day with you shows me that this is real. I want you to know that I'm thinking seriously about a future with you. Elisa, who had been watching Sophia play, turned to him, surprised. A future? Are you talking about marriage? A family? I want all of that with you. Elisa. She didn't say anything for a moment. Thinking about what he had said, she felt happy about what she had heard. She also felt afraid of making the same mistakes she had made before. Harry, this is a lot for me. I'm not saying I don't want it. I need time to think about everything. My life has always been hard. Trusting something this good is scary. I understand. I'll wait as long as you need. I just wanted you to know how I feel. Elisa smiled, feeling a mix of relief and hope. In the weeks that followed, Harry continued to show. He was always dedicated to her. He helped Elisa with her rehearsals, played with Sophia, even kept Donna Carmen company when Elisa had to be away for work or performances. He slowly became a part of their family's daily life. One evening, while Elisa was rehearsing at the hotel, Harry surprised her with a visit. He carried a small box in his hands and wore a slightly nervous smile. "What's this?" she asked. "Curious. Just something I thought you deserved." He opened the box to reveal a delicate necklace with a musical note pendant. Elisa was speechless. She was moved by the gesture. "Harry," she said. "It's beautiful. You didn't have to do it. This is just a symbol of what you mean to me. I want you to know that I support your dreams. Just as you inspire me every day." Tears welled in Elisa's eyes as he placed the necklace around her neck. It was a simple moment. It was meaningful. As their relationship grew stronger, Elisa began receiving more invitations to perform at important events. Her reputation as a pianist was growing. Harry made it a point to be by her side every step of the way. However, Not everything was perfect at one such event. During a dinner with hotel investors, a guest made a rude comment that bothered Elisa. "So you're the pianist charming the city? How interesting. Considering you come from such humble beginnings." The woman spoke condescendingly. Before Elisa could respond, Harry jumped in. "Elisa doesn't just charm the city, she transforms every place she plays. Her talent is undeniable. Regardless of where she comes from." Harry's response was firm. Elisa felt protected. Still, comments like that reminded her of the differences between their worlds and made her feel insecure. One night, as Elisa tucked Sophia into bed, she thought about everything that was happening in her life. Her career was going well. Her relationship with Harry was growing. She still felt afraid. She was afraid that everything could be taken from her, just like it had happened so many times before. Once Sophia was asleep, Elisa went to the living room where Harry was sitting with a book. "Can we talk?" she asked. "What do you want to talk about?" Harry asked, concerned. "I need to be honest with you. I'm scared. I'm scared of getting attached to all of." "What do you mean?" "I'm scared of getting attached to all of this and ending up hurt. My life has never been easy. It's hard for me to trust someone. Especially someone like you." Harry listened quietly. His eyes showed that he understood. "I know our relationship isn't simple. Elisa. I want you to know that I'm ready to face anything to be with you. No matter what happens. I'm by your side." His words made Elisa feel better than she had in a long time. For the first time, she allowed herself to believe it might be possible to fully trust someone. In the days that followed, Harry began planning something special. He knew Elisa needed to feel reassured and wanted to show her that he was committed to their future. One afternoon, while walking in the park with Sophia, Harry suddenly stopped and knelt down. "Elisa. I know your life hasn't been easy. I want to be a part of it. Through the good and the bad. You've." It gave her something she didn't know she needed: purpose. "Will you marry me?" Elisa was speechless. She looked at Sophia, who was watching with bright eyes. Then at Harry, whose gaze was filled with love and hope. "Yes," she said, tears streaming down her face. "Yes. I'll marry you." Harry stood and embraced her. Sophia was very happy. That moment was the start of a new time in Elisa's life. She knew there would be problems. With Harry's help, she felt ready to do anything. Elisa and Harry's engagement made her life better. Even though she still had important jobs like taking care of Donna, Carmen, Sophia. She felt different. She felt safer. For the first time, she felt she wasn't alone. News of the engagement spread quickly among the hotel staff and Elisa's friends. Marta, her closest co-worker, was the first to give her a hug. Tears of joy filled her eyes. "I knew this would happen," Marta said, squeezing Elisa's hands. "Harry is crazy about you. You can see it in his eyes." Elisa smiled. Though deep down she felt insecure. She knew their love was strong. She was afraid that something might go wrong. A part still thought about it a lot. Harry, on the other hand, tried very hard to show that he was completely committed. He started planning the wedding and always asked Elisa to make sure that everything was exactly what she wanted. "I don't want anything fancy," she said one day while they looked at places for the wedding. "We want something simple and meaningful." "Then we'll do exactly that," something that represents who we are," he replied, holding her hand. As the preparations moved forward, Harry grew even closer to Sophia and Donna Carmen. He made a point to include Sophia in everything. From park outings to choosing the dress she would wear at the wedding. "Mama, is Uncle Harry going to be my daddy now?" Sophia asked one night while Harry read her a bedtime story. Elisa stood in the doorway, listening. Harry smiled. Put the book aside and answer me. If you want me to be Sophia, I'd love to be your daddy." Sophia grinned widely and hugged him tightly, while Elisa watched with tears in her eyes. Despite the happiness surrounding them, not everything was smooth. Elisa continued to face challenges in her musical career. Although her talent was widely recognized, there were still critics and people who underestimated her, especially because of her humble background. Let's play a game for those reading the comments. Type Coca, leave a comment if you've made it this far. Now, let's get back to the story. At an event where she was performing for a group of investors, she overheard a comment that made her uncomfortable. "It's incredible how a simple waitress managed to come this far," a woman said sarcastically, unaware of the situation. That Elisa could hear her. Elisa took a deep breath, determined not to let the comment shake her confidence when she stepped onto the stage. She played with more emotion than ever, as if pouring her soul into every note. By the end, the applause was deafening. The same woman who had made the condescending remark was the first to stand and clap. Harry watched from the audience, beaming with pride. After the event, he hugged her and whispered, "Never let anyone define who you are. You prove who you are every time you play." Elisa smiled, feeling empowered by his words. As the wedding, the rude comment was the first to stand and clap. Harry watched from the audience, smiling with pride. After the event, he hugged her and whispered, "Never let anyone define who you are. You prove who you are every time you play." Elisa smiled, feeling empowered by his words. As the wedding day drew closer, family challenges persisted. Donna Carmen's health took a turn for the worse. Elisa spent nights caring for her mother while juggling her rehearsals and work. One evening, as Harry helped Elisa prepare dinner, she confided in him, "Sometimes I feel like I can't handle it all. My mom, Sophia, my career, now our wedding." Harry pulled her into a tight embrace. "Elisa, you don't have to do it all alone. I'm here. We're a team now." His words brought immediate comfort, and Elisa realized that for the first time in a long time, she truly had someone she could rely on. The wedding day arrived with a mix of nerves and excitement. The ceremony was held in a small outdoor garden, surrounded by flowers and delicate lights. Only close friends and family were present, making the moment intimate and special. Sophia carried the rings, walking down the aisle with a radiant smile as the guests looked on with emotion. Elisa, dressed in a simple white gown, looked stunning as she walked toward the altar, where Harry waited with eyes full of love when they exchanged vows. Harry held her hands and said, "Elisa, you've changed my life. You've taught me what it means to." The condescending remark was the first to stand and clap. Harry watched from the audience, beaming with pride. After the event, he hugged her and whispered, "Never let anyone define who you are. You prove who you are every time you play." Elisa smiled, feeling empowered by his words. As the wedding continued, "I truly love you. I want to spend every day by your side, facing whatever challenges come our way." with her voice trembling. Elisa replied, "Harry. You've brought light into my life. Thank you for believing in me. Caring for me and my family. I promise to stand by you no matter what." After their eye the applause was warm and heartfelt. The newlyweds shared a kiss, as if to seal all their promises. The reception was filled with laughter, music, heartfelt speeches. Marta, one of Elisa's bridesmaids, highlighted Elisa's strength and resilience. "I've always known Elisa was special. Seeing her here today, happy and fulfilled, is proof that she deserves every bit of joy she's found. And Harry, thank you for being the incredible partner she is." The condescending remark was the first to stand and clap. Harry watched from the audience, beaming with pride. After the event, he hugged her and whispered, "Never let anyone define who you are. You prove who you are every time you play." Elisa smiled, feeling empowered by his words. As the wedding deserves. Elisa hugged Marta, grateful for her friendship and support over the years. In the months that followed, life began to settle into a comforting rhythm. Elisa continued her musical career, now with Harry's unwavering support. He was by her side for every significant moment, celebrating her achievements and helping her through challenges. Donna Carmen, though still facing health issues, was at peace knowing her daughter was in good hands. Sophia thrived with the love. Harry gave her a condescending remark, the first to stand and clap. He watched her from the audience, beaming with pride. After the event, he hugged her and whispered, "Never let anyone define who you are. You prove who you are every time you play." Elisa smiled, feeling empowered by his words. As the wedding and attention Harry gave her now officially called him Dad. The biggest surprise came when Elisa discovered she was pregnant. The news brought a new wave of happiness to the family. "Are you serious?" Harry asked, his smile stretching from ear to ear. "Yes," Elisa nodded, laughing at his reaction. "We're having a baby." Harry hugged her tightly, overwhelmed with emotion. Promised to be the best husband and father. The birth of their son months later was a moment of pure joy. A healthy baby boy named Lucas, in honor of Harry's father, brought the family even closer together. With Lucas's arrival, Elisa felt her life had finally come full circle. The first months after Lucas's birth were challenging, filled with happiness. Elisa found herself in a balance she never thought possible. She was able to balance caring for the baby, giving Sophia the attention she needed, continuing her career as a pianist. All with Harry's constant support. He was always there. She shared household responsibilities and made sure she never felt alone. One evening, while nursing Lucas in the living room, Elisa watched Harry help Sophia with her homework. This scene, which was ordinary, showed how much her life had changed. Harry was now fully part of their family. Sophia called him Dad without hesitation. "Is everything okay over there?" Harry asked, noticing Elisa watching him. She smiled and shook her head. "Everything is perfect." Even though the household was harmonious, Elisa continued to face challenges in her career. Her growing popularity as a pianist brought her she started performing at more important events. This also made people doubt that she was really talented. Some people still questioned whether she deserved the recognition she was getting. One evening, during a charity event where she was supposed to perform, Elisa heard two men in the audience talking about her. They were saying bad things about her. It's impressive how someone from such a low background can fool so many people. She must have a good team behind her. Their words hurt her. Instead of giving up, Elisa decided to use that pain to become stronger. She sat at the piano. She started playing a difficult piece of music that made people feel many emotions. Every note made it seem like she was telling a story about her life, including the hard parts and the good parts. When she finished, the audience clapped very loudly. Even the men who had said mean things looked like they felt bad. After the event, Harry was waiting for her backstage with a bouquet of flowers. He said, "You were incredible. As always." He pulled her into a hug. "I needed to prove to myself that I could do this." "You've already proven it to the world," Elisa said. "Now you just need to believe it." As Elisa's career continued to backstage with a bouquet of flowers, he said, "You were incredible. As always." He pulled her into a hug. "I needed to prove to myself that I could do this." "You've already proven it to the world. Now you just need to believe it." As Elisa's career continued to soar, Harry also experienced changes in his life. After years of managing the hotel, he realized he wanted something more. Inspired by Elisa's passion for her music, he decided to start his own consulting firm to help small business owners. "I want to do something that makes a difference. Just like you do with your music," he told her one night as they shared a glass of wine on the balcony. "I think it's wonderful," Elisa said. "Harry, you've always supported me. Now it's your turn to follow your dreams." With Elisa's support, Harry launched the project, which quickly gained traction. His experience in the hospitality industry made him a popular consultant. He soon attracted clients from across the state. At the same time, Sophia was reaching her own milestones. At 5 years old, she showed a surprising interest in the piano. Elisa noticed how Sophia's small fingers tried to copy the movements she saw her mother's performances. "Do you want to learn to play, sweetheart?" Elisa asked one afternoon. Sophia nodded enthusiastically. "I want to play like you, Mommy," Elisa began, teaching her simple lessons patiently. They spent afternoons together at the piano. Harry often joined in, singing or tapping along to the rhythm. These moments were special for the family. Elisa felt she was passing on not just her love of music, a part of herself to her daughter. Despite the joys, challenges were never far away. Donna Carmen's health took another turn for the worse. Elisa had to dedicate more time to caring for her mother. Harry insisted on hiring a nurse to help. Elisa initially resisted, worried about the cost. "It's not about the money. It's about making sure you're not overwhelmed," he said firmly. After much discussion, she finally agreed. The nurse's presence brought the family much-needed relief. Donna Carmen, her part, seemed invigorated by the new addition to their household. "She's too good to be true," Carmen remarked one day while chatting with the nurse. "I still think you should charge less." The nurse laughed. Elisa shook her head, joining in the laughter. Over time, Elisa and Harry began planning a family trip. Something they had always dreamed of but never had the chance to do. Harry suggested visiting a small coastal town where he used to spend vacations as a child. "It has a beautiful beach, Sophia will love it. So will you. It's a peaceful place. Perfect for relaxing." Elisa loved the idea. They scheduled the trip for the following month. During the vacation, The family grew even closer. Sophia played in the sand with Harry while Elisa watched, holding Lucas in her arms. "It feels like a dream," she said, as Harry sat beside her. "It's not. It's our life," he said, kissing her on the forehead. When they returned from their trip, Elisa felt like she had new energy. She decided to write a new song. It was inspired by the time they spent together on the beach. She spent hours at the piano, creating a song that was soft and full of feelings. One evening, as she played the song for Harry, he suggested, You should perform this at your next concert. It's beautiful and unique. Just like you." Elisa hesitated, eventually agreed. The piece was an overwhelming success. It marked the beginning of a new chapter in her career. She started composing more frequently. She drew from her emotions and life experiences to create music that resonated deeply with her audience. The months turned into years. The family kept growing stronger together. Sophia started playing the piano in small shows, just like her mom. Lucas, who was 2 at the time, showed a natural love for music and played the piano with a lot of energy. Harry, meanwhile, grew his business and became well known. The months turned into years. The family grew in love and unity. Sophia began playing the piano in small shows, following her mother's example. Lucas, now 2 years old, showed a natural curiosity for music, eagerly banging on the piano keys. Harry, meanwhile, expanded his company, becoming a respected name in his field. He and Elisa remained each other's strongest supporters, facing life's challenges together with love and respect. One evening, as the family gathered in the living room, Sophia made a request. "Mommy, can you play the beach song?" Elisa laughed, sitting at the piano. "Of course, sweetheart." As she played, Harry held Lucas in his arms while Sophia hummed "Field." He and Elisa were each other's biggest fans. They faced life's challenges together with love and respect. One evening, the family was in the living room. Sophia asked, "Mommy, can you play the beach song?" Elisa laughed while sitting at the piano. "Of course, sweetheart." Harry held Lucas in his arms while Sophia hummed softly along. It was a simple moment. It was very meaningful. Elisa looked at Harry and felt grateful. "Thank you for showing me that I could be happy again." Harry smiled. "Thank you for letting me be part of this." Surrounded by her family, Elisa realized she had found something even more precious than the applause of an audience, the love of her family. With a soft voice, Elisa looked at Harry and felt thankful. "Thank you for showing me that I could be happy again." Harry smiled and said, "Thank you for letting me be part of this." Elisa realized that she had found something even more precious than the applause of an audience, the love and harmony of a home where every dream could come true. What did you think of Elisa and Harry's story? Share your thoughts in the comments. Rate the story from 0 to 10. What score would you give it? Subscribe to the channel and turn on notifications to follow all our stories. Don't miss more heartwarming tales by clicking here on the end screen.